Welcome to Brampton Focus. So you decided to run for council and you got elected. What are the difficulties of balancing a budget? How hard is it to work within the confines of council? How do you engage youth? What about infrastructure? All those questions. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We welcome Gurpreet Dhillon back to the show to give us his evaluation of how it is running wards 9 and 10 in the city of Brampton. Right here, next on Brampton Focus. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. His name is Gurpreet Dhillon. He represents constituents in wards 9 and 10 in Brampton, and he is a newbie, but he is very well spoken, and we welcome him back to Brampton Focus. Welcome, sir. Thanks for coming again.
Glad to be back. Thank you so much.
We enjoyed our first discussion so much, we decided to have him back because now we wanted to do a little bit of a drill down. First of all, I'm gonna cut right to the chase now. In Brampton, there is a whole bunch of taxes that are going to come to the fore. 4.9%, and I think it's 5.3% or 5.2% over the next several years. A huge increase. Bramptonians want to know, why are we paying so much more taxes?
Well, if you take a look at the bottom line, it's 2.2% of an overall 2.9% tax increase, including your education, including your regional tax. So it's a 2.2. I guess the 44% of what we pay on the dollar is from the city. So I just want to clarify that. And I think if you want to know why we've increased the taxes, because when we got into office, we thought we had no debt. We figured out we had about $140 million of debt. A lot of our accounts, reserve accounts were empty, and we found out we had about $1.2 billion in infrastructure repairs. So a city that's at 550,000 now, in about 15, 16 years, we're going to be at about 900,000.
Right.
So either we make the repairs now or the city will crumble. And these are some tough decisions we had to make. Was I totally satisfied? No, I wasn't. I thought we could have cut in more areas. I thought, councillors giving themselves pay raises that cost $500,000 over the next 3 years. I think that's unfair if we're trying to be as prudent as possible. So going forward, I'm going to be looking more towards cutting areas in which we don't need and try to make sure that our taxes as low as possible.
It's interesting you would say that cutting area. I mean, when we talk about density, in some of our research elements, when you look at density, I mean, you look at Brampton, within a kilometer, it's 1,960 people within a kilometer. So basically, that's the tax base, the amount of people that pay for some of these platinum services that we're talking about. When you compare that to Toronto, you got 2,650 people, and in Brampton, or sorry, I should say Mississauga, it's 2,400. So more people condensed in an area paying taxes for these platinum services. When you start talking about cutting things and raising taxes at the same time, there's a lot of people in Brampton that are a little leery of what's around the corner.
Well, I'm speaking about going forward, cutting things to make sure our taxes don't go up as high. But I think you touched on a key point that we need to start building up. I think if you look at the sprawl, where as you mentioned, 1,900 per square kilometer. Mississauga is at 25, and that's our sister city. We can always compare ourselves to them to see how we're doing, how good we're doing or how bad we're doing. And I think we need to start building up now, because not only will it bring in more tax revenue, but it'll make the city a much more
but when you talk about opportunities of building up, where do you build up? I mean, we lost the horses went out of the gate on transportation, because you lost over $400 million of an opportunity to build an equitable transit system that were going to drive people there. Okay, if I want to put a business, where am I going to go logically in Brampton to bring my business and my jobs to you folks?
Well, I think there's a couple of different corridors that we got to look at. One is here in Ontario, one is Queen Street as well, in terms of business, but also in terms of having a mixed area, whether we have residential and business as well. I was speaking to our economic development department. There are some areas right now that we are looking at. There's some expected developments coming up soon within the downtown area in terms of residential, but there's also plans as well where we want to really focus on building up
What about large-scale business? I mean, when Nortel left, thank God there's still Chrysler in Brampton. We've still got Bacardi's and Coca-Cola. I mean, those kind of companies are the ones that employ thousands of people. That's the kind of engagement that you're looking for in Brampton. Where do we see some of that development coming back?
Well, thankfully, Rogers was able to come into Nortel, and I have to shout them out because I worked for them for about 8 years at the Rogers campus on Dixie. But when we look at what we have in Brampton, you're absolutely right. We need to bring some of those larger scale companies in now. There's headquarters in Mississauga now, and I'll go back to them because, as I mentioned, they're a sister city.
Because big box stores only give you small wages and part-time work.
So they have about 60 Fortune 500 companies who've set up their headquarters in Mississauga, and I think that's something we need to look at, and we really need to expand upon, because if we're looking at getting a university here, we want our kids to study within Brampton. We also want them to have those jobs stay in Brampton as well, whether they're in the corporate world.
Let me refocus you back into location and locale and location. I mean, Mississauga actually located a corporate development area where they wanted to centralize them, where they're creating their own quasi-hub. What kind of a plan do we have in Brampton to do the same thing?
Well, I can tell you what the plan has been. And it wasn't a good one. We could have centralized.
Well, it ain't working too well up to this point.
We could have centralized it, but like I said, there's been a lot of areas where we've had employment land and we've converted it to residential for some reason, and I think that's something that we can ask the leadership from then. But what we need to do now is to make sure that the lands that we do have, we really focus in now. If you go down Beauvais towards the west end of Brampton, we do have some development.
What about Confederation Park?
Oh, well, that's something we can look at as well, right? That we're looking forward to making sure that we capitalize on and make sure that we do have and do we utilize it for business. But
so where do we get these plans? I think one of the things, there's a frustration from the average voter and the average constituents out there that politicians like to sit there, well, we're going to look at this and we're going to talk to this. I mean, I think a lot of people voted you and many of your colleagues into Brampton because they want to change. They want action. We're tired of lip service. We got to get her going. What are some of the things that you're going to put on the table to get her going, as they say?
Well, let's take a look at our downtown area right now. We talked about the LRT. LRT would have been would have been phenomenal. I think what it would have done.
I'm
getting into it.
But we need.
I know.
We need to find out absolute direction of what we're going to. What are the targets?
So, LRT would have been nice, but there's certain things in downtown where we're inhibited by. And so one thing is we need to change the infrastructure, for example, the sewerage system there. We need to do something with the Etobicoke. We have the canal plan that's coming up. So what that's going to do is allow businesses to grow up within our downtown core. Right now we're limited. So those are some of the potential plans that we have going forward. If we are able to...
We had a committee, did we not? We had a downtown development committee. We had another committee. And now some guy is launching a lawsuit because he says there's snow that's going to happen on. I mean, it's all this frivolous stuff that's happening. I think there is a bit of frustration. I got about 45 seconds left. There is some frustration from the folks in Brampton. They want to see action. And I think that's very much, and I'm not suggesting that you're not an action kind of guy, Gurpreet, but there needs to be some action. When we come back, I want to see if we can hit some absolute targets. Because there has to be something to rectify this. Taxes are going up. People are still taking the roadway to go and work somewhere else, and we need to bring them back to Brampton. And now with the continuation of building and all these other things, we have to have an action plan. And I think, Gurpreet, you're the guy that's going to answer those questions. When we come back, we will ask those questions. And you're watching Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Back with more right after this. And welcome back to Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We're speaking with Gurpreet Dhillon, who is the councillor for Brampton for ridings in the 9th and the 10th wards, as they say. Gurpreet, I want to talk a little bit about council. There has been some reports. The Brampton Guardian has written a couple of things and said there's been a little dysfunction in Brampton Council. There's been talk of bullying within the councillors. Some councillors have switched seats. I think the people of Brampton Brampton elected both you and the new mayor and the council to make some changes. And there's still some infighting and some dysfunction. What's your take? You're new.
Right.
You're the new guy on the street. No baggage. You come into this from a different perspective. Where do you see things laying out?
Well, I think there were 7 new members of council that came into their seats during the last election. But I wouldn't say there's a dysfunction within the council. Like I mentioned the previous show, I think there's elements of dysfunction that still remain, maybe from previous councils. And I think when you speak about moving offices, I think there's some of those elements still linger, in some councillors feel they couldn't have been as productive as possible. So they decided to move their office into another portion of the 4th floor, which is not directly where our council offices are, to another side of it. So, and I think it's been misreported. I think the full information wasn't given in some of those Brampton Guardian articles in which they stated, for example, that I stayed within the same area. Another councillor had moved to another section of the 4th floor.
So why did people move? Why did councillors move?
Well, I felt like I said, I felt like they felt they weren't being as productive as councillors because of this certain element of dysfunction that still.
What's a certain element of dysfunction?
Well, I think.
It sounds like, I mean, if we read between the lines, and of course, I know you're a politician, and I know you have to work with these people, and we're not here to slander anybody or put any words in anyone's mouth, but there has been some personal discourse. I mean, we've seen that. It's been reported. I mean, if you watch any of the council meetings, you can see that there is a severe agitation, and at times, instead of a council working together for the benefit of the community, they seem to be pursuing their constituents or their own personal gains, and it's creating friction, not as much as getting done.
Well, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is always remember that who we're serving, and that's a question I ask myself quite literally every day before I step into my office, just to make sure that I remember that it's the residents of Ward 910 and the residents of Brampton that I'm here to serve, to make sure that our kids get a good future, that our residents have good jobs, that we have a university eventually. So I think that's what the mindset and the goal should be for every councillor, and I'm looking forward to this year to make sure that if there's any disagreements or any type of issue that arises, that we're able to come together and work together to resolve any issue. Like I said, there's a lot of, and I will say though that there's some instances where maybe a certain councillor will take a small issue and perhaps go to blow it up and politicize, and I don't agree with that at all. I think it doesn't do any good. There's a certain respect we should have for our colleagues, and if there's any issue at all, whether it's a personal one or whether it's one that's in council, well, we speak directly to each other and get a resolution and get a solution for it.
So let's talk a little bit about cleaning house now. I mean, the election was tumultuous at best. There was police reports. Oh, we're $750 million that you haven't spent. There were charges. Then charges were dropped. People were fired. People were let go. People left. I mean, it was like, what the heck is going on now? Now I understand that there's an ombudswoman who is now coming to Brampton. Are we ever going to get past all this and start doing the work of the people and making Brampton move forward? Is this done? Is this the final culmination of the report of where we are with our budget, our deficit, etc., so we can move forward?
I'm hopeful that this is the last chapter, and I guess this series of events that haven't been too good for our reputation, but we have a new code of conduct that's coming in, and if you look at the past council, there were certain charges. If we had a code of conduct back then, there would have definitely been charges against them, but there were no rules. Essentially, it was what's the term I'm looking for? It's we trust you. We trust you that you're spending your money properly.
Well, it was also, I mean, one has to also say that the past regime started at a lower level and built the city up. There may have been certain checks and balances that one would say should have been instituted, but from where it started and where it had gotten to before this election, which was kind of like a culmination or a reckoning, I mean, there were certain things that were done because that's the way it was always done, because Brampton was a small flower community. It's not that anymore, thank goodness.
We grew very quickly.
Yes.
And I think we didn't have a set of rules in place, and I think certain people took advantage of it. So we have our code of conduct that's coming in. It's available for the public to review right now, and I think I think we're on the right path. I think the ombudswoman will come in. There were certain issues we had within our planning and certain, I guess, decisions made that weren't in the best interest of Bramptonians. But she'll come in. Transparency. She'll come in and investigate, and whatever she does find, we'll respect to her findings.
So transparency was one of the words that I heard a lot of in the election,
right.
Both from the mayor and from many of the councillors.
Right.
Is there a way, from a transparency standpoint, that the constituents of Brampton can participate in this code of conduct? Because, as you rightly said, you are working for the people of Brampton. Is there a way that the people of Brampton can have some impact on that code of conduct?
Absolutely, they can have their suggestions. I think the date is the 22nd, in which
you segued into that perfectly, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Where they can give their feedback. And, I think that's one of, as much as we want to talk about the negatives of Brampton, there's still positives. For example, we've had a very transparent budget process. Yep. We've tried to engage the residents as much as possible, like we've never done before. So we're on the right path. And so this is an opportunity for people to come and to take a look at this new document and let us know what they feel is good and what they feel is bad. And I think it's going to be beneficial for them, but beneficial for council as well.
When you look to the future, with just about a minute left
right.
in this segment, code of conduct, a little bit of the councillor settling down now. Is there one objective that you see that council wants to get accomplished in this term?
You know what? I think there's a culmination of things. I think it's not just one thing. I think every councillor in their heart of hearts wants to see the city go forward, and sometimes we have disagreements. We agree to disagree a lot of the times, and sometimes it might look like we're dysfunctional, but in actuality, it's just healthy debate.
Healthy debate is good. And when we come back, when we have our final segment, we'll do a little more healthy debate, and we'll look in Gurpreet's crystal ball and see where we're going to go with a couple of objectives for 9 and 10, and for as well the Council of Brampton. You're watching Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We're speaking to Gurpreet Dhillon, and when we return, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going to happen in the future and what are the good things that are coming to Brampton. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Back right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We're speaking to Gurpreet Dhillon in our final segment, who is a councillor for wards 9 in 10 in Brampton. Gurpreet, one of the biggest things that every city has is the challenge of youth. We want youth engagement. We want youth employment.
Right.
We want to deter youth drug abuse. We want to be able to promote an element of fellowship so youth within a city or within a region work together. What are some of the things, I know, and this is a leading question, I'll be honest to our viewers, there's a bunch of things that you're doing that exemplify all those and bring them together uniquely in the city of Brampton.
So a couple of the youth initiatives that we have is, number one, as I mentioned, we have Councillor Dhillon's Drop, and it's a place for kids to come to play basketball, kids from all ages, and what we do is hook them in so we can give them our message of maybe speaking to an MP or an engineer or a doctor. But so we want kids to stay off of drugs, stay on the right path. So we also have clinics coming up this summer. Again, we want to make sure that they come in and learn about sports, learn about sportsmanship, leadership, and cooperation. So those are some of the things. But what myself and our school trustee are working on is a youth initiative to make sure that our at-risk youth within the city have opportunities for jobs. So some of those summer jobs that we offer, whether they're driving a truck around fixing some of the greenery or working within the parks, it's an opportunity for those kids who might not come from the best of backgrounds.
To work, pay, and play.
Exactly.
But encourage these folks to vote. I would love to see something that encourages these youth at risk also to acknowledge their right to vote and have a chance to participate in the democratic process. Because, I mean, you're a perfect example of that.
Well, absolutely. We want them to make sure that they are engaged in politics and to know that, their vote does count. But just going back a little bit, a kid who works builds work ethic, builds a respect for money. And I think overall it's a positive experience for them. But what we want to do is make sure youth are off drugs, that they're engaged in their city, know what's going on, that the decisions that they make are going to affect not only theirs, but their children's future as well.
When you talk about better representation, as we said in the previous election, it was about transparency, and now people want better representation. Town hall has always been a way where people have the ability to go and ask their questions and pose their opinions, or I should say express their opinions to people at large. You've been doing a very unique thing in Wards 9 and 10 to be able to garner the opinions and where your constituents want you to lead Brampton, particularly from their point of view. Tell our folks at home what you've been doing. It's a very interesting concept.
Absolutely. So what we've done is something that's unprecedented within Brampton, particularly I would even say in Ward 9 and 10, is that we're going to the residents. So we have town halls, we make a schedule, and we post this schedule on Facebook or social media, different public places. And when we're coming to your park, we also bring our park staff, we bring a school trustee, we also bring the Peel Regional Police member. So any question you have, we try to answer it all there. Even if I can't answer it, the police officer will be able to answer it. If you have traffic problems, school problems, if you have any type of problem, what we do is we try to resolve them, but we also make a profile of your area so we know what's going on. And at the end of the year, what we do is give you all those results back. So what we're doing in 2016 is in May, we're going to have a municipal 101, most likely at Soccer Center, but we'll give you the information, is we're going to teach residents how municipal politics works, that it's a two-tier system, how staff operates, and we're also going to give you a crime prevention education as well. And I think one of the main things we've taken out of this whole process, Michael, is that in 9 and 10, there's such a big cultural gap where some of our staff had never went to 9 and 10, and they didn't know that, for example, even though our parks are designed for passive use, we have 100, 150 people congregating there every day. So we have to evolve with our demographics, but we also have to evolve as a city and serve our residents. So that same information we collected from this tour, we were able to give the staff, and so we have a Parks and Rec master plan coming up. So I think it's going to be effective in helping our staff come up with a plan.
Very cool and interesting. With a minute and a half left, Bill Lawrence, the famous CBC weatherman and host of Tiny Talent Time, said, if I had a magic wand, Gurpreet, and I could wave it, what would you see as the future for Brampton in the next 4 years? So when you put yourself forward for re-election, if that's what you so choose to do, what are some of the accomplishments? What do you see happening in the next 4 years?
Well, I don't believe in magic, Michael. I believe in hard work, and I think as long as I'm working hard for my residents, I'm working hard for the city, I'm not really concerned about re-election. I'm concerned about making sure that they have jobs, that their kids get a university education, that we have enough transit for them. And I always say this, I want you to live, work, and play in Brampton, and I want to make the city as best as possible. If somebody can do a better job than me in 3 years in 2018, and then you know what, I think it's beneficial for the city. But as long as I do my part now, I'm satisfied with that.
Well, I think it's exemplary what you've done with your youth engagement, the town hall, etc. Gurpreet Dhillon, councillor for Wards 9 and 10 in Brampton. And you know what? It's great to see someone who comes into politics and has your energy and your effervescence. And, you still have that little glimmer in your eye that you're going to continue. On behalf of Brampton Focus, thanks very much for spending this time with us. And we hope that you will join us again and watch Brampton Focus as we bring topics and things of merit to the folks in Brampton. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Thank you very much for watching. Look forward to seeing you again soon in the future. Good night.